Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Mark, a trainer here at WEX Field Service Management, and today we are covering payments and collections. This webinar will cover payments from the customer page, processing a payment versus recording a payment, credits and refunds, payments without an invoice, which we call unapplied payments, stored payment methods, some customer payment settings, customer statuses like accounts on hold for collections, taking a payment from an invoice, and then how to search for payments, sync status if you're syncing to QuickBooks, sending out payment reminders, and then viewing your transactions and statements. We'll cover lastly user permissions to make sure that everyone on your team can do payments as you want them to. And then we'll end with a live Q&A where you can get your questions answered live on stream. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into WEX FSM. There are many different places in your system where you can take payments. The first place we're going to go to take a payment is the customer page. So if a customer calls you, you can simply search for their name. So let's say my customer Justin calls me. I would type in Justin's name here. Since Justin is already in my customer list, he'll show up here and I will click on his name, which will bring me to his customer profile page. I can see I've already done some jobs with Justin on the side here, but to view and take payment, you can do that from the Payments tab. So I'll go ahead and click on Payments. From the Payments tab, this is where you can see the customer balance. This will be the balance of all invoices in the system. And, as you make payments to those invoices, this balance will go down. You have the option to process a payment, record a payment, or add a credit and refund. And we're going to just work our way through all of these. So, process payment. That means you're going to process the payment through WEX FSM. That is typically a credit or debit card, or you can also, if you have this part of your subscription, you can take ACH and check payments as well and process those. Processing means that it will go through WEX FSM and send the money to your bank account. There is a processing fee when this happens, and we'll look at processing statements towards the end of today's presentation. But that is the easiest way to take a payment and get that payment into your bank account electronically. Record payment is if you're not processing through WEX FSM. So that could be if you have a external card swiper with a different company, or you are taking a cash payment is usually the most common. You still need to take that cash to the bank, but you want to record that that payment was made. So you can use record payment. So let's see an example of this. If I click process payment, this will show you all of the invoices in the system. You can select one invoice or multiple. Let's say someone sends you a check to pay for the last 3 jobs you did for them. You can just look for what those jobs are, select the invoices for them, and make a payment. Take one payment towards 3 separate invoices or multiple invoices. Once you have the invoice that you want to pay, let's go ahead and pay for this one, the 402.19. You'll scroll down and enter in card information if they're paying with card, bank account information if they're paying with ACH or check payment. And then if you do have any payment details stored on their account, then you will select from that. You can click there and some of your customers may say, just keep my card on file and charge me when you need me. Once you make those payments, they will then deduct that payment from the total balance here, and you'll see a record of that payment on the invoice itself. Same for record payment. If I click on record payment, you've got the same options here. You can just select, the invoice that you want to pay, come down, choose the payment method, enter in, let's say they paid with a check today, and then hit record payment. Now, this is assuming that you have invoices already created. So typically, you would create a job, you would make an invoice, you would add items from your price book, build out the invoice, and then, send the invoice to your customer. You can take a payment directly from the invoice, or if you save that invoice, you can come here and make a payment to those invoices. So in that scenario, you are making a payment through the invoice. Even though we're doing it from here, we're still selecting an invoice to take a payment. However, if you want to take a payment without an invoice, you can do that as well. Maybe there's a scenario where a customer is on the phone with you and they're like, I'd like to go ahead and prepay for this if that's okay. And you don't want to turn that money down. So you want to take the payment because they're ready to pay now, but you might not, maybe you didn't make the invoice yet. So you can make the invoice later, that's fine. You can take a payment without an invoice, but there's a specific way to do that. Let's use record payment. And, in this scenario, we don't have the invoice that this payment is going towards, so we're going to use this option here, payment without invoice. And let's say we know the job will be $100, so we'll go ahead and take a payment for $100. Scroll down, date received was today. Let's say they paid with a check. And we're making this payment without an invoice, so we're going to hit record payment. And then when you see here, there's a yellow bar, this bar at the top. Click on that. And now the payment will be down here. That payment will be on their account and you will be able to assign that. So this is the payment that we made today for $100. Let's say you go and you create the invoice. You can come back to here, click on the edit pencil, and then you can reassign this payment to, whatever invoice that needs to go towards. And so you can take payments without invoices as well. Now, when you process a payment, there are batch times. So the way that payments actually work when you process them, let's take a scenario. You show up in the morning, you start taking payments throughout the day, you're doing jobs, you're taking payments. All payments entered into your system, being processed and sent to your bank account, are going to process throughout the day, and they will be sent to your bank account in batches. So you will essentially be entering payments through the entire day until 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the cutoff for the day. So 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, that's the cutoff. After that, any payments that are added after that time will be put in the next day's batch. Everything for that day will process through the night and be available in your bank account in the morning. And you'll see it as a lump sum in your bank account. For check payments, those are typically funded within 2 business days. And the cutoff batch time for that is 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So any checks that you are processing, they'll be in your account at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the cutoff. Those will then be batched and it will take 2 business days. Then you will see those check deposits in your account. So those are the timelines and the batch cutoff times for processing card and check payments. Now, you can also add credits and refunds. So if I click here, add credit or refund, you can do a credit and a refund at the same time, a credit only or a refund only. If you refund, it will refund to the original payment that was taken when you made that payment. So if someone paid with a Visa card, 1234, that's the card that it'll go back onto when you refund. For credits, let's say we want to make a credit, credits, there's a lot of different scenarios where you would offer a credit, but you are able to add a credit to an invoice. So if I have an invoice and I know I'm going to give this customer $50 off, for whatever reason, I can select that invoice and apply the credit to that invoice. If I just want to put a credit on their account and then, use that for a future service, I can do that as well. I would just choose credit without invoice. Put the credit amount, the date, which income account do you want this to sync to, and apply credit. Now that credit has been applied, and you will see that here in the top bar, the yellow bar. So any credits you have will be here, and any unassigned payments will be here. Now, as a pro tip, this is for anyone in onboarding. When your data gets loaded into the system, you may have unapplied payments in that data that then is loaded into your system. So after you've made the switch, after you're kind of out of onboarding, it is good to go through and just kind of spot check some of the customers that you think may have unassigned, payments. And if you do see an unassigned payment, then you can just click the edit pencil and reassign payment to send it where it needs to go. All right. Next, let's take a look at the rest of these tabs. So payments and credit by invoices will just show you the payments that have been made and the invoice it's connected to. So we can see this was paid by cash on May 7th, May 8th, etc. If you want to see the invoice, you can click on the invoice and it will take you to that invoice. And then if there's a partial payment that's made, you'll be able to see a balance for that. So that's payments and credits. Payment plans. If this customer is set up on a payment plan, which you can do when selling maintenance plans, you can set them up on a recurring payment, take their payment details, store them, and then it'll auto debit at the interval that you set. Let's say, monthly. So it'll just auto debit. It'll be a recurring payment monthly. And if they are set up on a recurring payment plan, you'll see those payment plan details here. Stored account is going to be any bank account or credit or debit card that has been added and stored. We saw an example of that earlier. And basically, we are PCI compliant, so you know that this is secure. And when you enter this, this will be saved here. But when you go to make a payment, you can use those stored accounts. And last but not least, we have customer statement history. If you do send a statement to a customer, you'll just see a history of that here. Okay. Now, while we're on the customer page, let's look at some customer payment settings. On the left side, we're going to scroll down and go to settings and preferences. And from here, you can choose the accepted payment methods and payment terms. So usually you want to take money any way that you can. So we're going to have accepted payment methods set to all. However, maybe there's a customer that you only do very big jobs and you require them to pay by check because you don't want to pay the processing fees when they use a card. So you can make it so that they cannot pay their invoices with a debit or credit card. It must be done via check. That is just an example. And then for payment terms, maybe you want to set this, to due on receipt for this customer. And then that means any invoices you create will automatically default to the due on receipt payment term. But if this is a commercial customer, it may get annoying to have to change it to net 30 every time you do a job for them. So you can just choose whatever payment terms makes the most sense for this customer, and it will automatically default to these settings when you create an invoice. All right. Now we have our foundation set here. You can take payments from the customer page, but you can also take payments directly from the invoice job form. So I'm on a job, navigate to a job. You can go to the customer page and find a job. You can hover over a appointment on the schedule. Basically, make your way to a job and it will look like this. And on any job, you have what is called the invoices and payments section. It's at the bottom. I've already mocked up some invoices. So right here, let's just take a look at this first invoice. I'm going to click on the invoice number. You can also click new to create a new invoice or copy to copy from a pre-existing invoice. But now that we're on the invoice, we've got a capacitor here. We're charging the customer $199.40. And if you scroll to the bottom, here are the payment options. These are the ways you can take payment. Pay now is just like process payment. This will process through WEX FSM, send the money to your bank account in batches. That is going to be the 9:30 p.m. Eastern time cutoff for cards, 7 p.m. Eastern time for checks, and that's pay now. Record payment is if you are not processing through WEX FSM. Example, someone pays you with cash, you'll still need to take that cash to the bank. Sending this to the customer will allow them to view the invoice. They'll see it as a PDF, and then they can make a payment online. And that is the same as processing the payment. It will be included in the batch for the day and be sent to your bank account. Delete, you can also just delete, save and close, save progress. There's some different options here. But for payments, we have pay now, record payment, and send. For today's example, let's go ahead and record a payment. It will remind you if you did not grab a signature, but you can bypass that if you want to. And this is already pre-selected because we are stating that we're taking a payment right now on this invoice. So here's the invoice. Scroll down. Let's say they paid with a check today, and we'll record payment. And so now we've taken a payment from the invoice level. And we can see here's the invoice. It's marked as paid. And here is the record of that payment. Okay. Next, let's take a look at how you can search for payments and send out payment reminders for collections. So every job that you have is going to have a invoices and payments section. So technically, you could go to each customer individually, go to each job individually, and see the history and details of payments that are happening. But if you're running a lot of jobs, it may be difficult to go into each job and take a look. So you want a place where you can see all your payments all at one time. And one of those places is by going to Jobs, Payment List. That's Jobs, Payment List. And the payment list is exactly what it sounds like. It is a big, long list of all your payments in your system. And as payments are made, you will see them here. And then as they settle, payment does have to process and settle in order for it to sync. But once it does sync, you will see the sync status say synced here. If it says ready, that means it's ready to sync, but it hasn't synced over yet. And of course, we're talking about syncing to QuickBooks. On this page, you can select a date range. Maybe I want to see all payments made, since the beginning of the year. So I would choose January 1st. You can search by payment type, payment method. Let's look at all of our checks. Payment status. Are there any that are pending that I need to take a look at? And you can search by customer name, payer name, or amount. Maybe you have a sticky note that has an amount of a payment on it that you want to search. So that is the payment list. If you click on this red drop-down arrow, it does give you a little more information. You can take a look at the invoice that this payment is applied to, and you can click the three dots here to edit the payment, which would be like reassigning it, change the customer, refund the payment, or delete the payment. So you can do some payment management all from this payment list page. Next, we need a way to see everyone who owes us money, outstanding balances, and send payment reminders for collections. One of the best reports that you have in your system to do this is receivables. So to get here, you'll go to reporting. That'll bring you to the reporting page. And then from here, under the accounting section, receivables. Click on that. That will bring you to the receivables report. If you are the one in charge of making sure people pay their bill, this is going to be your best friend. Now, from here, at first glance, it's going to show you all your receivables in your system. So all of your invoices. Then you can search by job type, by payment status, invoice status, by technician. Maybe I want to see all invoices that, Bruce made last week. And then you can just search. So if you know your customer, you just type their name in, see all their invoices and balances for that customer. Now, a scenario that you'll probably want to do is you'll ask yourself, who has an outstanding balance? Who owes me money right now? And so let's see for the month of May, we're going to choose payment status, and we want to look for overdue. The overdue payment status is anyone whose invoice is past the due date on that invoice. So here we go. We can see there's over $11,000 in outstanding balances, and we need to get that money. So you can quickly send payment reminders. Click Select All, Send Invoices, and Send. This will send out a payment reminder to those individuals, just letting them know, hey, you have an outstanding balance, please pay here. And they can pay online from that reminder. It's really nice when you send out a bulk reminder and a lot of people pay their bill all at one time. But that is the power of the receivables report. Next, let's take a look at transactions. So we're going to go to payment options, activity, transactions. This is going to be any transactions that you have processed in your system. Now, this is a test account, so it's been a while since we've done a real transaction. So let's see if we can refresh. I think there's something in 2024. Let's go back. Refresh. Okay, so here's an example. Like this is a test account, so we don't make real payments in this account, but you certainly will be making real payments. So you will see the batches. You'll see which settlement batch this is included in, the status of the payment, the customer, the payment method, the type, and if there was an invoice, what invoice that was attached to. If you click the plus sign, it will show you some other details here, reference number, who on your team processed this payment. If it was voided, you'll see that as well, and when it was voided. And then you have the option to physically print this or email this receipt to the customer. So just a good place to see your transactions, and you can also, search by batch, and there's a lot of filters here as well. For statements, you'll go to payment options, activity, statements. From here, you will see your processing statements and your WEX Field Service Management statements. Now, the difference between these two, processing statements are statements for the amount that you are charged for processing payments. Each payment that you process through WEX FSM, there is a processing fee. Those fees are charged at the end of the month, and they are charged separately from your main subscription. So, seeing those statements, you will be able to see a history of the payments you've made towards the processing fees. The WEX Field Service Management statements are going to be the statements of your monthly subscription. That is typically set up on auto pay, and you'll just be able to see your payments for your subscription here. The last thing we're going to cover before we get into our Q&A is user permissions. We want to make sure that, we set our settings, we know how to take payments, everything is good, but does everyone have the permissions to take payment and, financing actions in your system? To do this, we're going to go to settings, user management, users. From the user page, each user has their own permissions. Let's use our technician, Dustin, here as an example. And I always just like to spot check that they have the permissions for payments that I want them to have. So Dustin is one of my main technicians. I absolutely want him to take payments in the field. And so can he, or, do I want him to manually enter cards to take payment, manage recurring payments, perform credits and voids, and perform any financing actions? So these four, set them to yes if you want them to do those things, set it to no if you would like to prevent them from doing those things. And just as a pro tip, if your technician, let's say, calls you and says, "Hey, I'm trying to take a payment, it's not going through. I'm not sure why this isn't working." You can come here and just check. Maybe manually enter cards is off for some reason, and you'll want to turn that back on. This is always the first place I check when someone says they can't take a payment, just to make sure their settings are allowing them to take that payment. All right. So oh, I just like cracked into the microphone. That's all the information we have for today's presentation. I hope that you learned something. We're going to move to our Q&A now, but before we do, I just want to say thank you so much for joining. My name is Mark with WEX Field Service Management, and this has been Payments and Collections.